We're going to pick up where we left off. We're Feedback Loop Coaching. My name is Rachel, and I'm going to be kind of interviewing Chris about his experience in the jungle with the Yawanawa tribe of Brazil. And this is part 2 of a reflection series, though if you haven't watched part 1 yet, that's okay. It's not really chronological. Every video can be received on its own. And we are, though, going to pick up right where we left off. So I think we left off with you had just spent your first night in the jungle. I remember you speaking about enjoying sleeping in a hammock. And then, you want to begin with waking up the next day and go on from there?
Cool. Thank you for bringing us back. My name is Chris. For those of you who are new to our channel, thank you for tuning in and trusting and listening to us. It means so much to us to be able to share these gifts and this wisdom, especially from the jungle. So, here we go. Day 2. I remember I woke up that morning and we were going to be diving right into the experience. On day 2, we knew we were going to have a ceremony that night. So we woke up in the morning, we had breakfast, and then we got ready for our day. We got ready to go over to Matum, which Matum is another village near central Awawana, where we were staying with Hushahu. And what was special about today was we were going to go to Matum and be met by all the women of all the villages of the Yawanawa that are up and down the river.
River?
We could see the building from the river, and it was a large building. It looked like there was it was a wooden structure. You could see it looked like the roof was, I think it was like tree branches or leaves or something like that. It was a bit weathered. Though we get to Matum.
So there's a lot of travel by river. Are there docks, or like you just pull the boat up to sand, or like just drag it straight into the jungle? Like those of us who have not been there have no idea what this looks like.
Yeah, thanks for bringing clarity to it. So there was no dock. The boat lands onto the shore. And what's incredible was the river was low. So it was about 15 or 20 feet lower than it actually is. or normally is when the river's higher. So we were pulling up to the shore, and we had to step off the boat into the river and onto the land.
Something that I found really powerful when you first described this to me, this first ceremony or the first like day where you met everyone. The scene you were describing, you told me that it was like a gathering for them and their families, like the Yawanawa families and tribes, and the retreat goers from the United States and Brazil, and people who like signed up for this retreat who were not from the jungle were more observers and witnesses to something that was happening independently of the retreat experience that you signed up for. And I found that really powerful that you were there to observe and reverence and respect for something that was happening.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. Yes, it was for them. We just happened to be there, and they invited us in. And so it was a massive celebration for the village, for the work that Hushahu just did. And the women and the children and the men had set the space up for everybody. And it was just like a really powerful moment because as the talks began, they acknowledged all of us, and they acknowledged us as one family. And they also acknowledged that people traveled far to be there. And they did. Like the retreat goers traveled far, and also the people from the other villages of the Yawanawa, because some traveled like 4, 5, 6 hours via boat to arrive and be in this space.
And Peru is on the other side of the river, right?
Peru is not on the other side of the river, though it's relatively
Okay.
close. It's the same. It's the same Amazon.
Okay. Were there any tribes from other countries within the Amazon, like Peru? Okay.
No, it was exclusively the Yawanawa tribes of Brazil.
Okay.
But it was just like really powerful to notice because I know when I was looking into the retreat and looking where I was going to be, I noticed how close I was to the area that I first sat with ayahuasca in Peru. I was like, whoa, same jungle, same feeling, same everything. Just this invisible line differentiates both regions.
Cool. So you're in the ceremonial space. There's a fire in the center.
Yep, there's a fire in the center, and there's this really lovely smell. And I didn't know what the smell was, and it turned out to be the sepa, and it was the sepa tree that they would the resin that they would burn to clear the energy. So I equate it to how we use sage, and they were using that in the center to cleanse us all, to cleanse the space. And so we were in Matum, and Mazzini is the leader of the village of Matum. And when you looked up inside the ceremonial space, there were these massive photos that Mazzini put up of him and his wife and all these different moments that him and his wife had shared together. And they were just hanging inside the space. I was like, wow, this is so precious. Um, so we were sitting on the side. There was the center that had the resin burning, and then in the center, like a stage, there were these chairs set up. And then there was also musical instruments set up to the side. And the stage center was where all the women were gonna sit those who are going to speak and talk to everybody and share their experiences as elders.
Cool. I just want to backtrack a bit. You said that when you were all when you all woke up and had breakfast, you said you all knew that that night would be your first ceremony. For those of us who don't know what you mean by ceremony, do you want to share just a bit more? Um, yeah, what ceremony means, so we know when you woke up that day, we can feel along with you what you're all preparing for.
Yeah. Thanks for helping guide this. I really appreciate it. So, ceremony would be sitting with the uni, the ayahuasca, and we knew we were going to be in Matum sitting. So, for me, there was a lot of anticipation. I was like, okay, I'm new to this area. I have nerves about being new to an area. And now I'm going to another new area where I'm going to be sitting with ayahuasca and not really knowing what ceremony was going to be like, though I know my own process when it comes to psychedelics and taking plant medicines and how important setting is and how important the facilitation is
Set and setting.
and how important my own well-being is heading into the ceremony. So I was excited because I would be spending hours at this space before sitting that night. So I'd be able to become familiar with who was there, what was being talked about, what was being shown to us, and knowing that everything that was shared and spoken about would be directly influencing my experience that night. And I still was like discerning in my intuition about how much medicine I was evening.
I love that you bring up discernment because I know you don't have rose colored glasses for anybody. Like, anybody. You don't put anybody on a pedestal. You don't blindly trust anybody, though you move forward with such curiosity and openness. So I appreciate you mentioning that you're still discerning. And so you mentioned that you knew you would be in this space for hours leading up to ceremony, and that would be the first ceremony of the trip. So, what happened within those hours? One thing you mentioned was storytelling. You've shared some of that with me. So, yeah, what happened?
Stories. Really, what this one story I'm really feeling called to share and talk about, which created a lot of trust for me and the tribe and the people who were serving the medicine, was when, so for hours, and it was hot. It was hot inside the space, so we had our fans keeping us keeping us cool. I was wearing long sleeves, socks, pants because I didn't want bugs, like to be bitten by bugs, and I'd rather be with being hot than having to have any worry about being bitten. Um, so we're sitting there listening to the stories, and elder by elder by elder, and it's all women speaking to us, sharing with us about their experiences growing up. You know, one woman spoke about how powerful the energy of the grandfather is, and how grandfather energy really guides and has the ability to guide a family and has the ability to show the family where they came from and also help to inform where they're heading and why. And that was like really powerful because like I know you and I both they say like and tending to the children and helping raise the children, though the grandfather energy was about, you know, the support, like creating the physical support and also keeping the wisdom of the family safe and protected. So that was just like one of the ladies who spoke. But the one that really stood out to me was when she went up and we had people translating next to us. We were sitting in groups of English speakers. And then we had someone in our group translating the Portuguese for us to know what was being spoken about.
So the people speaking were speaking Portuguese. Okay.
Yes, they were all speaking Portuguese. They did not have an English translator standing with them. So they're just speaking Portuguese.
Um, I can't remember if it was something you just told me or if it's something you shared last time that someone refused to speak Portuguese, or is this what you're going to share
That's what
next?
I'm
Okay, gotcha.
that's what I'm heading into. That's why I wanted to set the stage because most of the tribe speaks Portuguese. And their native language is Yawanawa, the
Yeah.
Yawanawa language. So this woman, which the story I want to share was she came up, she stood up, she grabbed the mic, and she said that she would not be speaking in Portuguese, that she would only be speaking in the native tongue. So now she had somebody translating for her into Portuguese as she spoke Yawanawa. And I was like, oh, I felt that at my core. Because the ascent, like her overall message was, you know, if we lose our language, we lose the essence of the tribe. And she started to speak about, she spoke passionately. She started like, it felt like she was yelling, but I know it wasn't her yelling. That's just what,
Passion.
yeah, that's just what it is. And she starts looking at everybody and being like, I don't know what happened. We we grow up and as I grew up, my parents were teaching me how to take care of the home. My parents were teaching me how to cook, how to sew, how to build, how to create. My parents were teaching me the language of our people. And now something's different. Parents hire others to teach the children how to take care of the home, how to cook, how to sew, how to clean. So there's a disconnect. It's not coming straight from the family. And I was like, interesting, because I see that in our own culture. We hire out to learn something rather than learning from our parents or our grandparents. I was like, okay, interesting, interesting. And this is all in her Yawanawa language. And then she goes a step further and it's like, what I see now is everybody on cell phones. What I see now is people wanting to paint their faces, people wanting to learn the music, people wanting to sit with the medicine, and no one wants to take the time to learn our language. And then again, she reiterated, when we lose our language, we lose the essence of our tribe. And she's like speaking to the kids, and then now she's speaking to the parents. Teach your kids our language. Cool. Wear the jewelry. Great. Wear the face paint. Play the songs. But without the language, what does that actually mean? It's just this third dimensional show. It lacks the depth. It lacks the sincerity of what the tribe actually is.
Yeah. And language is a sound technology. And I know this is jumping ahead a little bit, but you've experienced the power of the sound technology of the tribe. And I also learned from one of my teachers when I was studying shamanism about 6 years ago. He was saying that each indigenous tribe developed a language in communion with the land and in communication with the land, listening to the land. And that always, from that moment on, it got me thinking about English, Spanish, French, these Portuguese, European languages that we speak in North and Central and South America. Even when I learned from the Mayan Wisdom Project, it's Spanish being translated to English because I understand Spanish, So when I'm hearing the nanas and tatas speaking Spanish, I do wonder if there is a part of them deep down that would much rather speak Mayan languages, have that translated. And I could go off on this topic because, when it's just you and me and I talk about English being a psyop, that was. I love having a shared language. It's helpful, though English sounds so different. Like when we were in Japan, Chris is wearing his Guardian of the Forest, Guardian of the Mountain shirt that we picked up in Japan at Mount Mitaki, and there are all these ancient languages that when I hear them, like I grew up around Hebrew, learning Hebrew, and then when I heard Sanskrit, I there were a lot of familiar sounds, and when we were in Japan, and then next we were in on Hawaii, and then next big trip here in the jungle, there are so many familiar sounds. Like when we were in Japan, we were in the Kanagawa prefecture. And then when you're in the jungle, you're with the Yawanawa. So I can't help but think that there's something more aligned for all of us than English. And I'll leave it at that. And so what happened after, or are there still more talks that are sticking out that you'd like to share before getting into what events occurred next?
I feel pretty complete there. That was just the big ones. Like, okay, use the language. And I was like, wow, like, and this person's speaking passionately about it, and like I could feel it off of her through the Yawanawa tongue. I was like, I am not gonna fuck with her.
And I feel that passion. Something that I really admired when we were in upstate New York with the Mohawk tribe was they're so organized, and there is a center for learning the Iroquois nation's languages. And that's something that I think about as right now we're on Nipmuc land. I would love to learn Nipmuc language. And I looked into if that's available, and back then I couldn't find anything. Maybe something created this, just so I could communicate more directly with the land of the land. Just knowing how languages are shaped, like indigenous languages are shaped and formed based on these connections with the land. And I would love for all of us to learn the actual names of the rivers. Like I know when we were on the way to upstate New York and driving by the Hudson River, and I was looking at the river and I was like, that's not its real name. And we looked up the indigenous name for the river. It is curious that Europeans would come to this land and just rename everything instead of learning. So I do think that this conversation is our time to not erase history, but just rewire it so that there is a deep respect for the language of the land and what was here first. And if you haven't seen Chris do that before, where he just did, he's sitting with Hape. It's spelled Rape with the apostrophe over the E for the accent. Hape. And he brought some Hape home from the jungle. But we can talk about that in person. So if you want to hang out with us and sit with Hape, come to an event. And so back to Matum, Massini's village. I'm guessing there are still hours to go before ceremony begins. So what's next?
So we took a pause and we all had lunch together. The whole group, all the talks ended, and we all got up and we went to the lunchroom. And everybody ate a meal together.
The lunchroom is in a different building?
The lunchroom's in a different building. The kitchen's in a different building that has a long table in it that probably sat like 50 people. There's a big kitchen in the back. And that's when I really felt more trust with the group because we were all eating together. And food in the kitchen brings everyone together. And when we were all sitting there or going to look for our seats, people were making room. There wasn't any othering. There wasn't any, oh, us versus them. There was none of that. It was all one family. We're here for this experience. We're here to celebrate Hushahu. We're here to share the wisdom and learn from one another. And that was just a really powerful moment to be able to sit there, feel peace, feel calm, and feel welcomed. So we all sat, we ate, and then afterwards had to use the bathroom. So Mackenzie, Joy, Shauna, and I, we got up, we walked from one building to the other side of the village and walked inside their home. And there was probably like 20 different Yawanawa people.
Like Mazzini's home?
And I don't know if it was Mazzini's home.
Okay.
But it was one of the homes in the village.
Gotcha.
So we walked in there and there was just hammocks set up everywhere. The people who lived there were just hanging out. Yep. And we just walked in and we went to the bathroom. And even then it was like we're walking into their home and they weren't looking at us strange because there we were walking into the home to use the bathroom. And again, that was just another moment for me to feel comfortable. We then went back into the ceremonial space and listened to a few more hours of talks. At that point, we learned, after a few hours, we learned that there was a boat that was going to be back to central Aravana if we wanted to go back to rest and just get ready for that night's ceremony, which would start at 9 p.m. back at Mazzini's village. So at that point, I had decided, yep, my time here listening to the talks was up and wanted to head back. And they just continued to talk as we got up and left. We went back to Central Yawanawa. I went up to my hammock and took a nap because I knew like the night was going to be a long one.
Okay. Did anyone go back with you? Mackenzie?
Everyone.
Everyone?
Felt
Okay.
like everybody went back. It was like the collective. It's like, oh, the one person's leaving.
Yeah, permission.
Yeah, permission to go.
Okay. Um, all right, so you went back to Central Avan
Awavana.
Awavana, which is what did you say? Like
5 minutes.
5 minute down the river from Matum. I feel like I'm learning the lay of the land through these stories. And I thank you for the details when I ask for details because I love imagining it. So you get back to your hammock,
Yep.
have a nap,
Have a nap.
and then what?
After the nap, we got up, went and had dinner. They made us soup for dinner just to have some kind of sustenance in us for when we took the medicine. And we're all like starting to get jittery, be like about, oh, we're gonna have some medicine. Everyone's like, medicine, medicine, medicine. It's happening. What's it gonna be like? We don't know. Some knew, not everyone knew. And it was just like really special. Um, Before going over there, I had a really nice heart-to-heart conversation with Mackenzie. When we hadn't had the opportunity to like have that heart-to-heart, and we shared with each other kind of like what our vision and what our goals are moving forward. She shared with me a really, really powerful project that she's working on, which I'm really excited about. And we started talking about aliens. We started talking about aliens and how we believe that they're real and how we believe that we're just there to help transmit, like we were born to transmit the aliens messaging. And it was the first time that like I don't think it was the first, maybe it was the first time Mackenzie and I actually spoke to each other about believing in the beings, but I don't recall that 100%.
Okay. Well, we talked about aliens quite a bit in Hawaii.
Okay, so then we did talk about them.
I think we always talk about aliens. But
So yeah, so we're getting prepared to go to Matum for our ceremony. So it's the sun is set at this point. We go on the boat, and as we're on the boat, the whispers are, we won't be heading back until the sun comes up. And I was like, interesting. It's 9 o'clock right now. The sun is probably not going to be up until 6 a.m. And we're like, okay, we're in this. Because I didn't know how long ceremonies were going to be. I'm like, all right, we're in this. So then we get back to Matum. We're looking around the space. There are people already beginning to set up their chairs. And it was like, where do I want to set up for ceremony? How's the ayahuasca going to interact with me? Where's the bathroom? Where can we purge if we need to purge? And everyone, we're given the guidance. If you need to purge, you can just go purge onto the land. You don't need to go to the bathroom, though you can if you'd like to, but you can give back to the land. You can find a spot and give back to the land. Here's the places you need to look out for so you don't fall into anything. Stay away from the bridge. Go by a tree. Here's the path to the bathroom so you know your footing. And you could tell everyone's nerves because they're like, I don't know where to sit. How comfortable do I want to be? Do I need to lay down? Will I need a bucket? Will I need this? Will I need that? What's it going to be like? And I felt pretty calm. I didn't feel like I felt nervousness around taking medicine. I hadn't taken medicine in 7 years, this medicine. So I felt nerves there. But my guidance, like my intuition was like, start slow. This is a marathon. You don't need to go up and take a full dose. Just have her in you. Just welcome her back in.
As I like to remind everyone, you can always drink more. You can never drink less. Just a PSA.
Yeah. So we're sitting, others start to roll in. The medicine keepers come and they set the stage for us. They set the container. We're back in the same spot, the same space that we were in earlier in the day. They had on the outside of the space, they had two roaring fires going. Two massive bonfires going. And we're like, okay, cool. So they're like, yeah, you can go and sit out there if you'd like to. Though try not to be out there for too long. It's there if you need it, but try to stay in the space because when you're on the medicine, you're in a force field. They call it the force. You enter the force. And throughout the night, Kuru and the gang would be like, can you feel the force? Are we feeling the force? Because they could perceive where we were at. And I was like, oh, yeah, great. So they bring in some more resin. They create a lot of smoke in the space. Hushahu, Kuru, I think Matsini, and one other person, they go to the center and they start invoking the spirits before the ceremony to cleanse the space, to create the force field, to create the protection. And then I'm like, oh, now my nerves are building. Like, this is happening. And after that space is set, they open up two lines for medicine. They have, I think that for this night, they just served one medicine strength.
Did you see how the medicine was prepared, or do you already know how it's prepared? And then was it in like a bowl, ladled? How, yeah, tell me more.
Did not see how the medicine was prepared. The medicine was in, I think this night, it was in like plastic bottles. And it was a brownish, wasn't this was a brownish tint. It wasn't too brown. Brown reddish hue. They were serving it in like a small glass, um, like china, like fine china, like you would have at Thanksgiving or some holiday dinner when they bring out when you have your nice glassware. So it was being poured out of a plastic bottle into this nice glassware. And we were told like, okay, you can go up and they'll understand a little bit, medium, or full dose. Standing in line, feeling grounded, remembering my feet, remembering where I am, not getting too lost in the what's going to happen, just being present for what it is. And then I go up. After I see people get served, people would have their serving and go sit down. And it was quiet. It was quiet in the room. It was quiet in the space. I'd go up. I asked for un poco. When un poco. As my guidance was like, you don't need to rush this. You can just allow it to happen.
Your inner guidance?
My inner guidance, yeah. So I go up. I have a little bit. I go and sit down. And then the ceremony begins. And during the ceremony, we all, like, at the beginning, everyone circles up around the center. And Mackenzie had shared, like, when there's a group of Yawa together, don't break up the chain. If there's a group of men together, the men link up with the men, and the woman link up with the woman. And
So she shared that from previous experience.
yeah, she shared that from previous experience. She's like, they'll welcome you in, but honor their tradition, honor their culture. So I linked up at the chain, and women would connect hands. Like, would they be holding hands like, may I see your hand? So we'd be holding hands like this if you were a woman. If you were a man, yeah, I'm going to be, the men's arm would be like this, and the men's hand would wrap around the bicep. So that's how the men would walk. So your arm would be linked. Like, if yours would be like that, you'd have somebody else grabbing your bicep. That's how the men walked. If you were at the end of the chain for the man, you'd have your hand around the men's bicep, but then you'd have your hand dropped for the woman. So you'd be linked with the men, but if there was a woman behind you, you'd be holding their hand. They wouldn't be grabbing your bicep. You would drop into their chain. Then women would be holding.
Okay.
Yeah. And we went around and walked around in a circle as the medicine came up, chanting.
So you serve the medicine and then you get in these circles, these linked circles, and then when you say as the medicine came up, tell us what you mean by that.
So, what I mean is when you began to feel the medicine, or when you began to feel her influence on you, like for those that have taken psychedelics, like, you know what it's like when the mushrooms start to kick. You know what it's like when the LSD starts to go, or when the cacao starts to hit, or something, when you have that come up.
Like they're here.
Yes. We were all linked. And there was chanting. And so we did that for hours, staring at the center point. And if you wanted to break the chain and go sit down, you could. Though it was really powerful. Like, I could feel the kinetic energy pulsing through my hand or my arm, depending on where I was in the chain. And they chanted their native tongue. And for most of the times, if you didn't know the chant, you just listened. Though over time, you'd pick up on it, so then you'd get involved. And something happened. Into my kind of my experience with it. So then afterwards, we sat down, and then they offered another serving number 2. So I'm like, yeah, serving number 2. Again, I have just a little, and I'm starting to feel the force, but I'm not fully in it. And because I just wanted to know and feel it, and I had a little bit. I don't know the last time I puked was, and I don't know, like, I had a little bit of poop. So we had the second serving. I go sit. That's when they start bringing out. They start chanting the deities, which is their spirits. And during this portion, you're just like sitting back, watching, feeling into whatever's coming up. They go through that, and then they offer up another serving. And this third serving is now when you want to come up and have more uni, you can come up and have more uni. Someone will serve it for you. So there were 2 official servings. Then a third serving, which was if you wanted it, you could have it. If you wanted to have a fourth, fifth, sixth, or seventh, you could go up and have it.
So that's when it was open bar.
It was open bar.
Okay.
And when it became open bar, that's when they brought out the musical instruments. And they started playing drums, playing guitar, and that's when the dancing would occur around the fire. And it would be this dancing that almost felt like a heartbeat. You'd walk in and be linked arms. You'd walk out, walk in, walk out, walk in, walk out. And then there would be moments where there'd be songs where you'd be going around in a circle, and then someone would grab your hand and walk around the middle of the circle as someone else was walking around the circle. And I think I told it felt like in Full House, like walking when DJ Tanner and the Italian guy walked around the table. That's what it felt like when being pulled into the circle. You're like walking around the table or walking around this fire.
I think it was Greek.
Greek, yes.
Yeah.
So that happened, and they kept asking, "Are you in the force? Can you feel the force? How's everyone doing?" And it got really interesting because people started purging, and I was like, "Oh, I could hear all the purging." And it also got interesting because at one point, someone came up and was like, "Hey, are you ready to go to Central Alavana? Are you ready to go back to Central Alavana? Are you ready to go back to Central Alavana?" I'm sitting there being like, huh, interesting. We were told that the boats were leaving at 5 a.m. or whenever the sun came up. Though what I later learned was that certain people in the energy that they were in was no longer serving the space. And they wanted to protect them and protect the space. So they went up, the shamans went up to certain people like, "Hey, it's okay to go if you wanted to go." They're like, "Oh, really? We can go?"
So they were relieved.
Yeah, they were relieved. There were people who were relieved to be able to leave. And as soon as they left, the energy in the space changed. That was another point of trust because I'm still discerning this. I didn't go fully into the force on this first night because I was still like, who am I sitting with? What are we doing? What are these chants? What's going on? And then I went up for a full serving after the space changed. Like, oh, I'm going. So I went up for a full serving, and I just had the time of my life. And at the end of the night, when the sun came up, Husha, who got up from her hammock, she was just resting all night. She got up from her hammock, and we did the boa constrictor dance. And that was one chain. We had one hand on a shoulder, and we walked like a boa constrictor, just like zooming in and out. And then we went back. After that, they closed up the ceremony space, and we went back to Central Alavana, had breakfast. We all talked to each other about our experience. Because once you're out of the force, once you're out of the medicine, it's not like coming down from Molly or coming down from LSD or coming down from mushrooms. You're done. You're out. Like you're still in it in a way, but you don't have the hangover. Like you're not like tripping. You're just out of it. And then we all went back, we had breakfast, and we talked about our experience. And then it was like, when we get back, it was like, okay, all the women are coming back, and we're going to talk. They're going to set up their jewelry, and they're going to share stories about their jewelry. And it was funny because I could still hear like some Westerners who couldn't fully surrender into jungle time. And jungle time is like the jungle determines when things are going to happen. So people are like, "Oh, well, what if I sleep? Am I going to miss what happens? Am I going to miss what time do I need to get up?" They're like, "No, no, no, don't worry. Just allow, just surrender, just be with it. Eat and go rest, and you'll know." And we knew.
Okay, so you talk about being in the forest and then leaving the forest, coming out of the forest. So just to recap, the conditions that create the forest. Of course, there's the medicine, the chanting, and what else?
The medicine, the chanting, the setting, the space that's being created, the shamans on the outside creating the grid around the ceremonial space, because there was sorry, there's the ceremonial space on the inside, and then I noticed the shaman men on the outside creating this crystalline grid over us, like an umbrella, so to speak. And that was also setting the container for the force. So the entities that were arriving were clean and clear and pure, and they weren't negative.
And maybe elaborate on what you mean by entities before we get into the next ceremony.
The spirit of the forest, the aliens, the blue people, wasn't the darkness. Because that space, like, especially when people were going through their experiences, some people were purging their own darkness. So the space was being held for that darkness to be let out. And when that darkness is being let out, it's an invitation for other darkness to come in because they're like looking for it. Because who knows where that darkness is coming from that's coming out of somebody. And there could be this other entity that was connected to them. And that's what allows the healing to occur because there's a separation between these dark negative forces and energy. And I think that was why they asked certain individuals to leave when they knew they were no longer partaking in the uni or in the ceremony.
Or ask them if they wanted to leave.
Yes.
And they said, yes, why? I do want to leave. Okay, so you went back, you had breakfast, slept, and then mysteriously woke up right in time for the jewelry sale. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about the jewelry and, yeah, I guess the jewelry, the rest of that day? Because I know these ceremonies were spaced out like every other day or every other night. So, what did you do in the meantime?
So I believe today was Wednesday, and the day was Wednesday. Time. I'm trying to be there for everybody. So, we woke up, we had lunch. We had lunch, and then we patiently waited for the women to come and set up their jewelry, which we're both wearing, some of their jewelry. And they gave talks to us about the jewelry and how special this was. So, like, Hushahu had a vision for this jewelry. And the Yawanawa jewelry is highly sought after. And it's different because they're made with glass beads. And Hushahu had these designs intuitively come to her through a diet years and years and years ago. And she empowered, like, so mine's a boa constrictor and Rachel's is a butterfly. So what the jewelry did was empowered women to create something, and it was to create something from their heart. So jewelry creation for them was very meditative. And if a jewelry piece had one bead that was off, they did not sell it. They didn't do anything with it. They just got rid of it. And it was done with purity. It was done with their heart. And one of the byproducts of this was how special the jewelry is and how like strong it is. Like I haven't taken mine off since I got it, and it's still like perfect.
Yeah, and I take mine off at night and put it back on in the morning, and it's still perfect.
It's not like, I've gotten bracelets around here that stretch or pop
Hmm.
and nothing's occurred.
Yeah.
And it said like the jewelry is armor and can protect you from external forces, external energies. So they talk about the jewelry, and the jewelry empowered the women to be able to sell it and then start their own villages, which was like, whoa. So now Hushahu, their first spiritual leader, their first spiritual woman leader, is empowering the women to start their own villages, which is changing the course of history for the tribe. Because up to this point, it was just the men doing these things. It was just the men, just the men. And which challenges Mazzini, because Mazzini is coming from, in some of these other villages, they're coming from the patriarchal side of things, which now we're moving into the matriarch. And now women are being empowered to start their own villages, to start their own families in their own villages. And these bracelets are doing it because, like, if we're third dimensionally, the bracelets aren't cheap. Like I saw on Etsy how much they're going for if you buy them online. And I was like, wow, they are not cheap. And fortunately, like being there, being able to exchange and give them their reas. I was like, wow, I'm giving you money to start your own village or to develop your home. And it was just like, whoa, this is like incredible stuff. So that's where I got like these bracelets. I got these bracelets at the jewelry exchange. I got this holder here, which helps to protect the hape. I got that at the jewelry exchange, and they were selling clothing. They were selling other hape applicators. They were selling feathers. I got this feather there, and I knew it was directly going to them, and it just like felt so nice to be able to contribute in that way. So that was the rest of Wednesday, where we just had this moment. We got our jewelry, we got our gear, we all got jazzed up. Like we're protected now, like, and then you know the next day we had our painting ceremonies where we all had our faces painted, and it was divinely guided because a cold front came in, and the next day was cold. Like that night got to like 50 degrees or 40 degrees or something. And the next day we had our faces painted. We didn't sit for 2 days. It wasn't until Friday that we sat again. And this was the big ceremony. This was the ceremony in Hushahu's space in central Awawana where we've been staying. So I felt really comfortable, really grounded, really safe, really supported. Because for those days we were sitting with one another. They were singing to us regularly. We had a hape ceremony where it was where I think Kuru applied it to me, and just having someone blow the hape into you is very different from self application, and I honor that. So it's like I will not like when I've been serving people hape here and like sharing them what I've learned with the medicine through the ceremony. They're like, "Oh, you're gonna apply this to me?" I'm like, no, that is not my role here. I'm just sharing medicine. I don't have the training. I don't have the comfort. I don't have all the connection to the hape where I would like to have it if I were to serve somebody. I want that training because when you're in yoga it's called prana, and in the Tao it's like chi, and you're serving somebody your prana, you're serving someone your soul essence when you're blowing it up into their cranium. So that's what we had on Thursday, and then Friday we had a song workshop, and they shared us some of their sietes, which is their some of their chants. And the chants we were shared didn't lift the vibe or lower the vibe; they maintained the vibe. Yeah, and then that led into Friday night ceremony with Hushahu, her family. There was probably another there's probably 150 people in this ceremony, and they were all there. They were all friends, family, relatives to celebrate Hushahu, more focused in celebrating Hushahu, where the first ceremony was celebrating the women. This was celebrating Hushahu in her own home.
All right, so just seeing the time, we're just past an hour. I'm gonna ask you, do you want to take a break and have this as like a 1 hour video? And then because I know what the next ceremony entails, just you told me, and I know that we're going to want to go into detail about it. It's the one with the blue beings and with me. I appeared. And so maybe we'll take a break. We'll share this as another as part 2, and then we'll come back for part 3.
Yes, I think that sounds great because especially I want to hear your perspective as somebody who was at home and like experiencing something when I was like in the forest, because I went there on the second ceremony. I felt safe. I felt comfortable. I did 3.5 servings that night, and I feel it's important to just honor that experience as its own and keep it digestible for everybody, because this has been a lot, and I think like an hour is a really nice length of time to be sitting and listening, especially if you're listening to it nowish in New England. It's summertime.
So cool. So next one, you'll share about your experience, and then you can interview me about what my experience was like back home.
Sounds great.
All right.
Well, thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate everyone taking the time. I know you could be doing anything else in this moment, and you chose this for yourself. And thank you for the support for us.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Until next time.